Biggest World Economic Forum on ASEAN 2018 held in Hanoi. And later in our crosstalk, building digital economy in ASEAN. Hello there, you're tuning into another edition of BizLine here on VTV International. I'm your host Hoàng Hằng, and let's now take a look at some economic highlights over the past week. The World Economic Forum on ASEAN, or WEF ASEAN 2018, themed ASEAN 4.0 Entrepreneurship and the Fourth Industrial Revolution took place in Hanoi from September the 11th to the 13th. Participated by leaders from roughly 60 countries and more than 1,000 representatives of businesses around the world. This is the biggest WEF on ASEAN ever. In his keynote opening speech at the official launching ceremony on Monday, Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc suggested 5 priorities for ASEAN in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, including building digital connections and sharing data, creating a harmonizing business environment, developing a regional startup incubator and incubator network, promoting talents, creating a network of regional education. The same day, the Vietnamese Prime Minister also delivered a speech at a plenary session at the New Vision for the Mekong region panel discussion, urging countries in the Mekong region to strengthen cooperation for development. On September the 13th, addressing more than 1,300 enterprises, half of which were foreign companies at the Vietnam Business Summit 2018, Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc stated that Vietnam has no ambition to be the best in globalization, but it has a desire to befriend the best players. Theme Vietnam We Mean Business, Connect and Innovate, the event was the first of its kind in a regional World Economic Forum, or WEF. Addressing the summit, WEF President Borger Brander applauded the tremendous achievements Vietnam has recorded over the past 3 decades, as shown by WEF reports on the Vietnamese government's constant efforts to improve the situation. For his part, in his remarks, WEF founder and executive chairman Professor Klaus Schwab said that this was the most successful regional meeting of the WEF. The 2018 U.S.-Vietnam Business Summit on the future of bilateral economic relations took place in Hanoi on Monday with the participation of Deputy Prime Minister Trịnh Đình Dũng and more than 150 representatives from government agencies and businesses who visited Vietnam for the WEF ASEAN 2018. The delegations discussed trade cooperation between the two countries in many fields. The summit focused on building a healthy, competitive business environment, promoting e-commerce, cybersecurity, and sustainable development in logistics and supply chains. The summit included big names such as Google, Citigroup, Amazon, and Cisco. A ceremony was held on Monday to officially launch the bilateral border gate in Chi Ma in Vietnam's Lạng Sơn province and Ai Dien, China's Quang Tri province. Chi Ma Ai Dien is the 6th border gate between Vietnam and China. Over the last few years, trade turnover between Vietnam and China via Lạng Sơn province reached about $8 billion per year. The opening of this border gate is a significant way of promoting socio-economic development in Vietnam-China border areas. A Vietnamese delegation led by Minister of Planning and Investment Nguyễn Chí Dũng attended the 4th Eastern Economic Forum from September the 11th to the 13th in the Russian city of Vladivostok. Themed to the East, extending the limits of opportunities, the event demonstrated Russia's desire to integrate broadly into the Asia-Pacific through special incentives and effective cooperation models. Vietnam now invests in 23 projects worth nearly $2.9 billion in Russia, mostly in oil and gas, telecommunication, shopping malls, agriculture, cow farming, and milk processing. Russia accounts for 13% of Vietnam's outbound investment. The U.S. government lowered the anti-dumping duty on frozen warm water shrimp from Vietnam. According to the announcement from the U.S. Department of Commerce, or DOC, on Monday, the final rate is 4.58%, which is far lower than the preliminary rate of 25.39%, first announced on March the 8th. The rate is also slightly lower than the duty in the prior period. Last year, the export value of Vietnamese shrimp to the U.S. fell 7% from the previous year because of the hefty anti-dumping duty. The decrease in exports continued in the first 8 months of this year. Most large investments in Vietnam startup projects have been provided by foreign investors whose investment is 5 times higher than domestic ones. This was among the key issues discussed at the conference, Measures to Attract Domestic and Foreign Resources for Vietnam's Innovative Startups, on Monday. Total transactions of foreign investors in Vietnam accounts for nearly 40%. Many of them even plan to set up venture capital funds in Vietnam. To draw the attention of foreign investors, experts suggested developing a database which would connect the National Innovative Startup Portal with those of other organizations, cities, ministries, and branches to provide essential information for businesses and the startup community. Those are the highlights in economic news. Up next, we will see how digital economy shaped the development of ASEAN economy, including Vietnam, in our crosstalk. In the context of the fourth industrial revolution, digital technologies are set to form the basis of economic activities. Experts say that with their advantages, Southeast Asian countries have a huge potential to develop a digital economy. However, this potential has not been fully tapped. So how will the digital economy shape the development of ASEAN economy? What challenges remains, and how can member countries work together to foster the digital economy in the region? We will learn more about the topic in this week's edition of BizLine. But first, let's see what makes ASEAN a potential region for developing digital economy in the following clip.
According to global management consulting firm AT Kearney, Southeast Asian nations have the potential to leapfrog to the forefront of the global digital economy and enter to the top 5 digital economies by 2025. This is because a number of fundamentals are already in place. The region has experienced fast economic growth at an average of 6% annually. Smartphone penetration is estimated at around 35% and growing rapidly. In addition, 40% of the population is comprised of young people. Experts say that the younger generation are digital natives who will shape the digital economy of the region with their innovative and entrepreneurial spirit.
In order to take a closer look at developing digital economy in ASEAN, our reporter had a discussion with Vice President of the World Bank in the Asia-Pacific region, Ms. Victoria Kwakwa. Let's take a look.
Thank you so much for joining us. So ASEAN is said to have a huge potential in developing a digital economy. So where is ASEAN now in the world in terms of digital economy?
I think this is a really important topic for ASEAN. Indeed, there's a significant potential to develop the digital economy in ASEAN. We see that on several indicators, countries in the region are above the global average. For example, the number of hours that they're on internet and internet penetration rates and so on are relatively good. At the same time, we see e-commerce is beginning to pick up in several countries as well. But it's still the case that there's still a lot of unexplored potential to build this digital economy. And so I think the fact that we're having conversations about the digital economy is evidence of the fact that the leaders and the countries really want to go to the next level. So it's indeed a very important area of work.
In your opinion, how will digital economy transform the economy and the development of ASEAN in the coming time?
The digital economy is the economy of the future. You know, it's really about more efficient ways to do business. It's about the potential to be more inclusive. It's about new jobs, you know, and different ways of working than we've worked in the past. Now, clearly, it's going to increase productivity. You know, that's going to be a big gain. And as it increases productivity, work can be done faster, more efficiently, incomes will rise. I think it's also going to potentially reduce opportunities for corrupt practices, because people don't have to be in touch every time to transact. You can do your business registration online. You can pay your taxes online as government adopts e-government service platforms. You know, so a lot of it will be done without negotiation. You know the rules, you go online, you do what you need to do. And it will make it easier for businesses to do their business. You know, so all of us in some ways will benefit. I think it's important as countries are pursuing the digital economy that they also look at the issues of inclusiveness and how you can make sure that the entire population is benefiting.
When mentioning about digital economy, people talk a lot about e-commerce due to fast changes of technologies. So in your opinion, what is the role of e-commerce in fostering the inclusive growth of ASEAN?
E-commerce, what does it mean? It means that you can access markets just by sitting in your home. You know, you don't have to build a physical place. You might have a warehouse and so on, but you can access customers. You can get entry points to people and places where you have to sell your goods and services. There's a potential not to be excluded because you can be in a very remote area in the northern mountains. But if you have access to internet, and if you have access to the right connectivity and the right platforms, you can sell your goods and services. So it makes it very easy for everybody to be involved. But as I was saying, it's very important that the infrastructure be provided. If the infrastructure is only fast and efficient in places like Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City, then it's not everybody that's going to benefit. You know, here in Vietnam, you can be in the northern mountains and you can sell to somebody down south in Ho Chi Minh or somewhere else in the Mekong Delta. What you need is to connect on the internet, and that does it. So it should certainly facilitate cross-border trade, trade between countries, online trading. And that is an area where there's huge potential for growth, huge potential for more revenues to be made, huge potential for incomes to be beefed up.
Experts say that the rise of digital technologies will drive the growth of e-commerce. According to research by Google and Temasek, the e-commerce market in ASEAN countries will reach a value of $88 million by 2025. From $10 billion in 2017.
Digital economy is moving into everything, and there's examples of how do you connect farmers, how do you connect people in rural areas that can start exporting and selling their products. So it's really a thing that will, you know, go into every corner of the economy with very large potential.
E-commerce has been changing the shopping habits of customers, but even more than that, it has also changed enterprises' business operations, especially for export companies, facilitating their cross-border trade with partners in the region.
So one more big major frontier for us in Nestlé Vietnam is on sales automation. In the old days, you used to take orders with a pen and paper. Today, everything is through a mobile phone. So we've successfully completed this automation exercise, and this has made us to be fully in a way, living in a digital ecosystem with our distributors.
However, experts point out that there are still a number of barriers in fostering cross-border trade via e-commerce, including infrastructure and logistics.
We need to keep the freshness and ensure stocks are moved in an economical way, where it's kept in good quality and the receiving markets don't have to reject anything. To facilitate this, we have to make sure the process documentation is done one time and first time right.
Insiders have shown their optimism at the fact that ASEAN countries are taking steps to address such problems.
Between Vietnam and Cambodia, the roads are not good enough. Now, the minister told us they're being upgraded from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. So once that happens, you will just be able to see the transit time between Ho Chi Minh and Thailand will half. That will also mean less trucks going to the port, so you'll see less congestion at the port.
In order to foster the flow of goods within the region, 6 ASEAN countries including Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Brunei and Vietnam have been implementing the ASEAN single window mechanism to expedite cargo clearance and promote the electronic exchange of border documents.
So a number of ASEAN countries have together built up a mechanism which is called single window mechanism in order to boost the flow of goods. So what is your thought on this mechanism?
First, the governments need to be commended for trying to do that, doing the ASEAN single window. That's an important first step. You know, my understanding is that it doesn't work flawlessly. You know, it can still be improved so that it's more efficient, so that it's really the single window that it's supposed to be. So there's still some work to be done. You know, they need to assess where the problems still are in terms of the implementation of the window and continue to improve it. You know, sometimes it's around issues of data, some of the regulatory issues, and remove all these constraints so that the single window can work more effectively as an instrument for promoting cross-border trade.
In terms of logistics, what is your opinion about the infrastructure for logistics in developing e-commerce in ASEAN countries?
Logistics is itself being digitalized, you know, but logistics is an enabler of the digital economy. You know, if people are selling goods online, you know, they have to transport it nevertheless. You know, so that's where the logistics comes in. So you need to work on the logistics to make it efficient, to make sure that you bring down the cost of logistics. In some countries, including in Vietnam, the logistics costs are quite high. You know, so policies that will really make logistics more efficient, more able to serve the digital economy. These are also issues that need to be looked at. So it's not just about the infrastructure of logistics. It's about the services and how the services are offered, efficient services, reliable services, goods can move easily, you know, and so it's policies around that, the enabling policies that need to come together. So logistics functions as a facilitator of the digital economy.
Non-ASEAN countries such as Japan have given legal and financial support for ASEAN to help it build the foundations for digital economy. So what is your opinion on this?
Countries like Japan and even China are ahead of quite a few of the countries. By the way, Singapore is really good on logistics too. You know, Singapore is well known for efficient logistics and so on. So you shouldn't leave Singapore out. I don't know the details of the support that has been provided by China and Japan, so I can't comment too much on it. But what I can say is that this is an important area. It's fundamental to being able to do the service delivery that is needed for your digital economy to be able to thrive. And there are different models, you know, but generally these two countries are ahead and countries in ASEAN could learn from them.
According to a survey conducted by global management consulting firm Bain & Company, Retail, small and medium-sized enterprises in ASEAN that operate e-commerce platforms saw an average of 15% spike in sales. However, the survey also showed that only 16% of SMEs had used digital tools to their full potential. Cross-border payment is considered one of the main hindrances to this.
Chúng tôi mong muốn hình thức thanh toán không dùng tiền mặt sẽ ngày càng phát triển ở ASEAN và thậm chí là có thể đến những cái vùng nông thôn. Ngay cả những người ở vùng nông thôn cũng có thể bắt đầu chinh phục thương mại điện tử khi họ khởi nghiệp với những cái doanh nghiệp nhỏ của mình.
Meanwhile, experts say that SMEs need to be more involved in digital platforms to foster trade.
Different stages of a booking. Now that traditionally could take hours or days in an offline type of scenario because you would need to contact the local office. But we've digitized a large part of that process. The whole transaction in just a matter of minutes. So we really are trying to help these small businesses go global by making it easy for them to trade.
According to statistics, SMEs account for around 90% of total enterprises in the region. Experts suggest that governments should create conditions for them to access financial, technological, and human resources. What is your opinion about the legal framework for developing digital economy in ASEAN countries?
Policy and regulatory issues that need to be done on different aspects. Let's take e-payments, for example, which is very much related to e-commerce. The regulatory framework continues to need to be worked on. You can look at policies that might provide incentives for SMEs to want to use e-payment approaches. Policies around infrastructure sharing. These are all policies that the government could put in place to make it easier for the connectivity to happen. And then you mentioned regional cooperation, so the digital economy ideally should be an integrated economy across ASEAN. Yes, you start with individual countries, but just as you're trying to build the ASEAN economic community, a digital integrated economic community is really important. So policies that the countries do together to standardize in certain areas that make it easy to do business across different countries, so that the business policies in one country are consistent with the other. All of that are the sorts of policies that will help and will make sure that ASEAN is able to tap the power of the digital economy.
How does the rise of digital economy push ASEAN countries towards policy coordination?
The world has gotten smaller because of globalization, and people have come together more to do things together across countries, across regions. It's been done through trade agreements, and it's been done through integration efforts that use the digital technologies so that the different countries can come together. ASEAN countries can link up with other countries. It's a global community, and everywhere that there are opportunities to link up, to use digital technologies to connect, to transact business, to exchange ideas and goods and services needs to be taken advantage of and can be taken advantage of. I think the proximity of the ASEAN countries to each other make it a little easier to start here and to integrate in this space. And then it's also possible to do it with others as well.
According to experts, in order to foster the development of the digital economy, both demand and supply need to be considered, especially in terms of technology.
I think what's going to be important to take a step back and say, how do we create shared infrastructure that allows us to make tech accessible to people in different markets in a cost-effective manner?
In addition, experts stress that collaboration among parties is important for the digital economy to thrive in ASEAN.
I see an opportunity for the ASEAN area. Maybe certain country to country can join together to share their resources, including tools and the talent. Some of the private company can also establish that type of alliances, if you would.
The role of government is to ensure that you have the enabling regulatory to encourage private sector to invest. Because to really harness this potential, it's got to be public sector working with private sector.
Collaboration among parties was also stressed in a number of panel discussions among representatives of several international corporations and government officials at the World Economic Forum on ASEAN, which took place this week in Hanoi.
During the World Economic Forum on ASEAN 2018, there were a number of sessions mentioning about the digital economy. So what is the role of this event in helping ASEAN countries to improve its capacity to develop digital economy?
This event is about learning. And then what I also heard were some very concrete suggestions. For example, the Minister of ICT of Vietnam opened the session that I was in, and he made some very concrete suggestions on what Vietnam would like to do, suggestions that ASEAN could consider, to beef up the digital economy. Then there was a minister from Indonesia who also spoke about how the digital economy should be developed in a way that it is inclusive and people are brought in, as I was saying. So the working groups will take all of these suggestions and then discuss it and work with them in the working groups. And then they will come up with proposals that I think eventually will go to the ASEAN leaders. So it's a process. It's a process of coming together, taking feedback, and then going away and doing the work. And apparently this initiative was started in April 2018. So I think it's a good initiative which will come up with some very concrete things for the leaders to consider and to adopt.
What is your assessment about the contributions and also the role of Vietnam in ASEAN to develop digital economy of the region?
Vietnam is an important member of ASEAN. Vietnam is one of the larger ASEAN countries. And Vietnam is very innovative and entrepreneurial. As you see, even the startup culture is really taking off. Vietnam has talent in issues of science and technology. So I think that there's a lot that Vietnam can bring to the table. The progress that it's made on connectivity and the progress that it's also made on use of mobile phones and so on. And then Vietnam needs to do more, in terms of whatever the frameworks are to train, to give digital skills, to work on some of the issues of logistics, and to open up more to working with other countries in a way that's more streamlined and consistent. One area where Vietnam needs to do a bit more is the e-payments, because there I think, it's still, compared to other countries or some of the other countries, maybe there's still a lot more work to do, and that can also be one way that you promote financial inclusion, bringing everybody to participate in the financial sector. And you might know that the government is also looking very much at e-government approaches, which will really be very important. And then it needs to work closely with other ASEAN countries to see what it can do to allow this regional initiative.
Once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
According to global management consulting firm Bain & Company, ASEAN's digital economy represents only 7% of its GDP, compared to 16% in China and 35% in the US. It is expected that digital integration can deliver a $1 trillion rise to the region's GDP by 2025. Therefore, experts stress the need of collaboration among member countries in order to fully tap such large potential of developing the digital economy in the region. And that also wraps up this edition of BizLine. For more news and updates, please log on to vtv4.vn or our YouTube channel at VTV4Go. Thanks for watching, and until next time.